10 millimeter hand loads with Hillbilly Scholar. So Hillbilly Scholar is one of my Patreon supporters, and he did send over some cast bullets that he cast himself. And what these are 200 grain hard cast bullets for 10 millimeter. One of them is the Keith style semi-wad cutter right here, and the other one is our truncated cone semi-wad cutter. So I load these things up with accurate number 9 powder. It's a very windy day today. Some Winchester large pistol primers, and what I have going on there is I loaded 11.8 grains in both these loads here. So that's really one thing that's interesting about a 10 millimeter revolver like I have here, is you can load up some stuff, and and it kind of in some regard will do some of the things that like 41 Magnum will do. But what I like about the 10 millimeter revolver is you can go out and buy boxes of 40 Smith & Wesson and shoot through that all day, $15 boxes of ammo. So I think it's versatile, but you can also load up some bullets that might not work very well in a semi-auto pistol. So 11.8 grains. Now what I have going on here for our seating depth is with these Keith styles here, I have them seated to 1.270 because that's as far down as I could seat them, where that top of that wad cutter edge is flush with the case mouth. And then with our truncated cone, I had to go down to 1.260 because any longer and they would kind of hang up on the cylinder throat chamber there and wouldn't seat all the way. So I'm hoping to keep these very similar in velocity. But you might see I have some 357 Magnum jacketed soft point. I brought that out just for a comparison here. And you might be saying, well, that's not fair. But what I'm doing here is this is just a control round. Just a control round. It's our basic 357 Magnum, or the original load, 158 grain jacketed soft point. And I want to do that in my ballistic gel test, and then just kind of see how these 10 millimeters compare to that. Simple as that. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic gel test. So I'm going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential of those cartridges are. No rib simulation that can slow down its penetration. No fabric. I'm still going to use fabric even though it's redundant. So no fabric that would clog a traditional hollow point, even though these are not hollow points. I'm still going to include it, but we'll just go a plain clear ballistics shot to see what the best potential is, see how deep these will go. Then I'm going to do more of a real world simulation where I got 4 layers of thick sweatshirt material I'm going to put on this first 3-inch piece. After that, we're going to have a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard that's going to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, then another 1/4 inch MDF that represents hitting back ribs. Clear ballistics is about our half representation of the density of flesh. So when you're talking 3 inches and 16 inches, that's really more like 1.5 inches and 8 inches in a real living target. So if we go about 3 inches past this back rib simulation, that would indicate it would likely pass through an average size individual. And I'm pretty confident all these will pass through. Maybe not the 357, but the 10 millimeters being hard cast probably will. So it'll just be kind of an interesting test here. And then I am going to shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up, we're going to run our control round, our 357 Magnum 158 grain jacketed soft point. So this is just our control round to compare to these 10 millimeters. So let's see what I can do with our 357 Magnum, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get. 1164, 1185, 1166, 1132, 1152, 1148. So that's pretty low end for 357 Magnum. We should be seeing more like 1250 feet per second with a load like that. So it is kind of a lightly loaded load. So first up with our 10 millimeter here, I'm gonna test the truncated cone ones first here. And I did put black marker on the last round in that cylinder so that I can see if we got significant bullet creep out. So I'm gonna keep an eye on that. So let's see what we get here with our truncated cone hard cap. 1129, 1127, 1101, 1139, 1105. There's a hair creep out, but it's not enough that I think would make a significant difference there. These are not particularly powerful, but they are a little bit more powerful than that 357 Magnum. Last shot here. .17. So I'm gonna move on to our straight up semi-wad cutter, our Keith style semi-wad cutters. So these are just a little bit longer, so we might see a velocity drop, but I'm hoping that we stay similar enough that we can really focus on the difference in the designs there. So let's see what we get with our semi-wad cutter, a Keith style. 1130, 1090, 1139, 1022, 1041, and we have significant creep out with this load. I don't know why, but quite a bit. So we saw that velocity starting to drop. So let's see how fast this last one's going to be moving. Well, it creeped out a good 1/4 inch. You might see a huge drop there, but might as well fire it off. Yep. Huge drop there. So I'm gonna have to work on the crimps there. You know, with a load like that, I should probably try to do a roll crimp over the shoulder, being that it was flat with that. But for whatever reason, the truncated cone, just using the standard taper crimp, didn't have a problem. So I'm thinking there is probably a little bit more side of that bullet for friction with the truncated cone. That's probably why I didn't have a problem, but maybe there's a little less friction there, so that would require a roll crimp over that edge probably. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see how these compare. All right, our first shot in the plain clear ballistics. I did put our blanket backstop down there just to try to catch these bullets. So if you didn't catch on, or you might have missed it, I'm using the 357 Magnum soft point as a control round because that's such a classic round, and it's known for penetrating pretty well to compare to these 10mm hand loads. So it's not a direct comparison between 357 Magnum versus 10mm. I'm not gonna be like 357's terrible, 10mm is great based on any of that. It's just a control round. So jacketed soft point 357 Magnum clear ballistic, plain clear ballistic. All right. Yeah, that thing penetrated pretty good. Penetrated pretty good. So let's do our, first up, it's going to be our truncated cone. And then the next shot after that is going to be our semi-wad cutter. So truncated cone, hard cast. Semi-wad cutter. Ah. I had a light primer strike on that for some reason. Yeah, it's a hard primer. One more try with our semi-wad cutter. Ah! Pull that one out. I got another one in here, semi-wad cutter. Try that. All right, so I think there's a problem here with the way that I have these seated or something, where it's too far away. So what I'm doing now is I don't have that moon clip on it, and that's the problem, I'm thinking. So let me go grab a moon clip and put these in the moon clip. That'll give us a little bit, you know, further back with that round. And it also looks like our truncated cone went out the block to the left. Happens every time I shoot solid bullets, they curve out to the left. So I'm just gonna redo this. So we'll try it again. Our truncated cone, then our semi-wad cutter with the moon clip in there. So here's our truncated cone and our semi-wad cutter. Let's go take a look. All right, so it blew this thing off of here. So yeah, we went right through here. Here's the thing, you know, this hit it, the soft point, and then our truncated cone went all the way through. But our Keith style looks like it stopped in there. That is, if that's the Keith style. It may not be. Let me take a look at these tracks. It is really hard for me to tell at this point, because one of them stopped, but I can't tell which one that is. I think that was maybe the other one of these, and then the Keith style I think went straight through this whole thing. Possibly. I'm not 100% sure. But it's so close that it's really hard to tell which one is which at this point without cutting that out. And I don't want to cut that out yet. So yeah, we went through 35 inches of gel. Now let's try it with our rib simulation and see how these do. All right, our real world simulation: 4 layers of thick sweatshirt material followed by 3 inches of clear ballistics followed by 1/4 inch MDF that represents hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and another 1/4 inch MDF at the back to represent hitting back ribs. If this goes beyond 3 inches past that back rib simulation, that means this went straight through an average size individual. So let's see what we get with our 357 Magnum soft point. These are going under the block in the back, so we're not going to get a perfect measurement here because just the way these are, they're wanting to go under it. And if I take another shot, well, then it's going to take up the space for where these are going to go. So this is not going to be a perfect comparison here, but you know, it was our control round anyway. So let's see what we get here with our next shot with our truncated cone through our real world simulation. And I'll make sure to check that semi-wad cutter before I fire it, just make sure there's no bullet creep out. It looked like it took a good 5 rounds for that to happen. So, truncated cone. We set that back up and hit it with the semi-wad cutter. All right, I didn't see any meaningful bullet creep out with that last semi-wad cutter in there. So let's see how our semi-wad cutter does. Let's go take a look. All right, so what happened with our 357 Magnum is it went down, it went to about 31 inches and went under the block. It hit this blanket backstop, then went back under the block. So we went through all of that 35 inches, and here's our 357 Magnum. All of that. So that's a good penetrator. And these all went through the rib simulation, so this is fair here. First one here, here's our 357 Magnum. It almost looks like it's starting to tumble a little bit as our truncated cone and our semi-wad cutter 10mm are going through perfectly straight. So that's really surprising to get that level of penetration with that 357 Magnum. So this hit in 2 different spots. Here's our 357 Magnum. Here's our truncated cone 10mm, and here is our semi-wad cutter 10mm. It does look like our 357. It punched through straight, even though you'd think it was tumbling there. I don't think it was, because it wouldn't have made it this far. So just the way that MDF looks is kind of an anomaly. These look like they are tumbling, and what I'm seeing here when we look at these really wide tracks would mean they are tumbling. So these bullets are coincidentally straight, but they did tumble. I know that. So interesting here, our truncated cone went to a total penetration of 25 3/4, and then it rolled back just a little bit. Yeah, 25 3/4, and our semi-wad cutter went to I'll give about 24 3/4. So I'm really surprised about that 357 Magnum. Never would have guessed that, never in a million years. Very, very interesting. So 10mm, you know, it's an okay cartridge, but what I find is it isn't the easiest thing in the world to get a great load out of these revolvers when it comes to like hard casts, because I've seen kind of the same thing with Buffalo Bore and Underwood hard casts, where they're not going quite as far as the traditional revolver cartridges. Very interesting. Let's pull these all out of the block, take a close-up look at these bullets, and then I'll shoot our steel and see what kind of shootability I get with these. Alright, so here's a close-up look at these bullets, and I wanted to show our 357 control round first, because this does typical things through our plain gel. It doesn't really change the bullet a whole lot versus how it looked when it started, when we go through our real-world simulation, it kind of mushrooms a little bit. And my real-world simulation is going to simulate basically a medium-sized game like a deer also, so that's basically what you're going to get from a handgun going through a deer with that 357 Magnum. It's a little bit of flattening there. And here's why people use hard cast for dangerous animals. We had no deformation of these. It's very hard for me to tell which is which from the plain gel to our real world simulation. I can only tell because this one has a little bit of fabric stuck to the wax that's on that bullet. So here's our truncated cone. You can see here, Hillbilly Scholar did a pretty good job with these because these are extremely hard. I don't see any deformation of those bullets at all after going through two different rib simulations there. Very, very good. And our semi-wad cutter here, again, it's a very hard cast. We can tell that one went through our rib simulation because I got MDF stuck to that wax there also. So two of them through our real world simulation, our semi-wad cutter versus our truncated cone. Very, very good, very hard bullets, no deformation really at all. And the ones through our plain gel, obviously the same thing here. Just fantastic bullets overall. It's just, I think for my revolver, they're a little bit long, so they are wanting to try to start to tumble a little bit. So potentially maybe for that revolver, maybe a 180 grain might be a little better, or I can get more velocity on them, and that might fix that problem too. So, interesting here though. That's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, so I decided to come back all the way to 75 yards just for fun, just for a challenge, to kind of a hunting scenario here, just trying to hit the target from 75 yards. So let's see if there's a big difference between our 357 Magnum and my 10mm hand load. So let's see what I can do with our 357 Magnum 158 grain jacketed soft. So not as good as I used to be here. I think it's just because it's cold. So let me go single action with these and try to make some more precise shots. I'd be doing that if I was hunting anyways. Single action. See how this will do. So these rounds are definitely shooting to the left for me because I had to aim off the target to the right before I started making hits. And my hit rate wasn't that good, to be honest. Not with this size gun. I should be able to do better than that. So 10 millimeter, these are our truncated cone. So these have more mass, so they'll fight this harsh wind a little better. But let's see where these things are going to hit for me. I have no clue. So with those, I had to aim. I'm not sure. I think they are hitting all a little bit to the right. And I'm aiming at the left shoulder. So I think, I don't know if it's just my eyes been changing or what, but it seems like all my guns really want to shoot to the left more than they used to. And I don't think it's my technique. I think it's just my eyes are looking through these sights a little different than they used to, because it's been same time this has been happening and things have been looking more blurry for me. So now our semi-wad cutter, and keep in mind that last shot here is probably going to be moving a lot slower, but it's still like a 45 auto on that last shot. Semi-wad cutter. All right, so I'm going to say these hand loads are pretty good, and to be honest here, I've been having some trouble with accuracy with this revolver. I haven't been able to hit anything at distance with this, with the jacket of hollow points I've been using. Like, usually it's the opposite. Usually I can hit like every shot with my 686 or something like that. Then I'll go to shoot this and I won't hit anything. This flipped upside down, where this is finally a very accurate ammo for this particular revolver. So really, really good as far as accuracy with that load. And the recoil on this, I would say, it's about the same as that 357 Magnum. You know, 357 mag I think was a little less powerful, but the bullet being that much lighter, you know, you would think that would have more recoil, but this outweighs that revolver by I think like 3, 4, 5 ounces, something like that. It's just enough to make this 10 millimeter load feel like a 158 grain 357 mag, a lightly loaded one out of this revolver. So I really like that we have some really low recoil there. But look at this, look at our terminal ballistics. I'm still having some of the same issues I've had with Buffalo Bore Underwood hard cast ammo, where it's just like it just kind of wants to tumble a little bit at a certain point. A lot of people say, well, that's your rifling, but honestly I don't think it is. You know, one in every 18 3/4 inches for this. Your typical 10 millimeter pistols, 1 per 16. It's not a significant difference in spin rate, in my opinion. It's not enough that I think that would cause tumbling with terminal ballistics versus a semi-auto pistol. So I think it is just one of those things where it is kind of tricky to get a 10 millimeter loading for a dangerous animal protection, to be honest here. So that's one thing to think about, because I know a lot of people depend on that when it comes to like grizzly bears and whatnot. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying it wouldn't work fantastic. I'm just saying that in my experience, it seems like the 357 and the 44 do tend to penetrate a little bit better. But 10 millimeter revolver is kind of a jack of all trades though. We can shoot some low end 40s out of it, or if we can go up and do some ladder loads to get them up closer to 41 Magnum, then we might see a little bit of difference there. But interesting anyways. So thank you again to Hillbilly Scholar for casting and sending these bullets. Kind of cool that I could, you know, do some, you know, cast bullets, and I'm going to say these are pretty good because I've shot some pretty junky cast bullets before made by professional companies, and they were not very good, and I knew they were not very good because I couldn't hit anything with them. The fact that I can hit from this distance a lot, that says a lot. So again, thank you, and thanks for watching, guys.